Bang! The sound echoed through the valley like a firework on the 4th of July. But it was no celebration. I came running out of my farmhouse, boots barely laced, hard in my throat. My dog, Cooper, barked wildly as we sprinted together toward the open pasture. I had just been finishing up my morning coffee when I heard the gunshot, and that's when I saw it. Lying in the middle of the field was Jasper, my prize bull, motionless, his massive brown body still. His chest didn't rise. His eyes were open, but lifeless. "No, no, no," I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. Jasper wasn't just any bull. He was a legacy, a 12-time blue ribbon winner worth more than a new truck. He was the heart of my ranch, a gentle giant who ate apples from my hand and loved country music more than most people I know. I looked up, and that's when I saw the two men standing near the fence line. They weren't hunters. They weren't thieves. They were in reflective vests with HOA, property maintenance, stenciled on the back. "What the hell did you do?" I shouted. One of the men looked startled. The other held a rifle. They froze like deer in headlights. That's when the man with the gun stuttered. "We thought he was a threat, sir. He charged at us." I looked back at Jasper. He hadn't run anywhere. His hooves had barely shifted from the same soft patch of earth where he liked to sunbathe in the mornings. "You shot my bull on my land. Who sent you?" "The HOA president," the man mumbled. "She said we were authorized to clean the property." I couldn't speak. My voice broke. My fists clenched. Then my phone buzzed. A message popped up from my neighbor Lisa. "Hey, just saw HOA trucks headed your way. Something about a surprise property inspection. A fire burned inside me, hotter than the Texas sun. What kind of cleaning involved trespassing, loaded rifles, and killing a man's livestock?" And that's when the real storm began. Now let me take you back to how this all started. 2 weeks before that awful morning, I had been enjoying one of the few peaceful days on my ranch. The spring air was crisp, the cows were grazing. My son Ben, home from college for the break, was brushing down Jasper near the stable while telling me about a girl he liked in his economics class. We laughed. It was one of those rare father-son moments you want to bottle up and keep forever. That's when we heard the knock. It was sharp, repetitive, almost rude. I opened the screen door to find her standing there. HOA President Cheryl Langston, clipboard in one hand, tablet in the other, blonde bobbed hair, sunglasses too big for her face, her lips pursed so tight they could have cracked a walnut. "Mr. Granger," she said with a smile so fake I could smell the plastic, "we've received complaints about overgrowth on your property line and some unsightly structures behind your barn." I blinked. "You mean the hay storage? It's not compliant with HOA standards. I don't belong to the HOA." She tilted her head. "Actually, your land falls within the extended oversight radius of our community association bylaws." That was the first I'd heard of any extended oversight. I wasn't even in her subdivision. My ranch was a historic homestead passed down since my great-grandpa settled it over a century ago. The HOA had no say here. Still, I kept it civil. "I'll double-check the boundaries," I told her, "but you're not authorized to manage my land." She smiled again. "Well, we'll see about that." At first, I thought it was just bluster. Cheryl was the kind of person who loved control. She had tried to find another neighbor for parking a boat in his own driveway. But the very next day, I noticed something strange. Orange flags, dozens of little surveyors. Flags lined up along the back edge of my property, stretching for nearly 200 yards. I hadn't hired anyone. Ben hadn't either. Then came the drone, buzzing over the ranch like a nosy wasp. Ben tried to chase it with a broom. That same evening, I got a letter shoved under my door. "Notice this property is being evaluated for corrective landscaping and visual compliance. Kindly vacate unauthorized structures by end of the week." It was printed on HOA letterhead, but unsigned. I should have called a lawyer right then, but part of me thought surely no one would be that crazy. I'd had run-ins with stubborn folks before, but this was trespassing bullying. That weekend, Ben left to visit friends, and I stayed back to tend to Jasper's feed routine and repair a broken fence. On Sunday, I noticed tire tracks on my private driveway, deep, fresh ones. But when I walked around the house, no one was there. It started to feel like I was being watched. Monday morning, I got a call from Miss Cheryl herself. "Mr. Granger," she began, I wanted to inform you that we're sending a crew to help clean up your property tomorrow at no cost to you. I blinked. I didn't request any cleanup. Well, she said sweetly, we received a petition from the board, and it passed unanimously. We're just trying to beautify our neighborhood. My ranch isn't part of your neighborhood, I replied. Oh, but it affects the aesthetic, she said, especially for the backlot homeowners with views of your property. Just trying to help. Then she hung up. I reported the harassment to the sheriff's office, but since there was no physical damage yet, they said they couldn't intervene. Call us if anyone sets foot on your land without permission, they said. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning I woke up early. Something felt off. Cooper barked nonstop near the back door. I grabbed my boots and went outside, heart pounding. That's when I heard the first engine, then another. 2 white trucks with HOA logos rolled up the dirt path behind the stables, ignoring my private property sign. 4 men hopped out with gloves, chainsaws, weed trimmers, and guns. I yelled, "Get off my land!" One of them shouted back, "We're here for authorized cleanup. Don't interfere." I ran for my phone. I dialed the sheriff's office, told them everything, begged them to come quickly, but it was already too late. From across the pasture, I heard a loud crack, then a second, then Cooper howled. I dropped the phone and ran, and what I saw next was the last thing I ever expected. Jasper down, blood on the grass, the workers backing away, looking panicked. And in that frozen, shattering moment, I realized they had shot my bull on my land while claiming to clean it. I sank to my knees. I was shaking with rage and heartbreak. Then one of the workers pulled out his radio and said something that made my blood run colder than ice. "Call Cheryl, tell her the bull's down, and tell her we might have made a mistake." I stood there trembling, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. My prize bull, the animal I'd raised from a calf, trained, fed by hand, was gone. And all because some HOA goons were pretending they had authority over land that didn't belong to them. I looked up at the man holding the rifle. "You shot my bull for what? Because you thought it was a threat during a cleaning?" He didn't say a word. Neither did the others. They just exchanged glances, whispering to one another like scared kids who had broken something they couldn't fix. I grabbed my phone and pointed it at them. "Smile for the camera," I snapped. "You just earned yourself a one-way trip to court." That got them moving. One of them tried to block the shot, stepping between me and the others. "Sir, please. We didn't mean for this to happen. The HOA president gave us clearance." "You had no right to be here in the first place," I shouted. "Now you're going to explain to the sheriff why you're trespassing and why you're carrying a firearm on private property." Right then, I heard the wail of sirens in the distance. Thank God. I had called them the minute the trucks rolled in, and they were finally closing in. The workers started retreating toward their trucks, but I wasn't going to let them drive off so easily. "Stay right there," I ordered, stepping in front of their vehicle. "You're not going anywhere until the sheriff gets here." One of them hesitated. The man with the rifle set it down slowly on the tailgate, like he realized just how deep in trouble he was. They were all sweating now, clearly not expecting any real consequences. 10 minutes later, a dusty patrol car pulled into the lot, tires crunching over the gravel. Deputy Harris stepped out. Young guy, smart. I'd seen him before at the local livestock fair. He took one look at Jasper's body, then looked at the HOA crew. "Whose weapon is it?" he asked flatly. "That'd be mine," one worker said, raising his hand nervously. "You got a license for that?" Yes, sir." "Do you have it with you?" "No, sir." Deputy Harris turned to me. "You own this land, Mr. Granger?" "Yes," I said. "It's been in my family for generations, and I never gave anyone permission to come here with chainsaws, rifles, or anything else." One of the workers piped up, but Cheryl said, "I don't give a damn what Cheryl said." The deputy interrupted. "She's not the law." Then he reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I've got an unauthorized discharge of a firearm in a possible trespassing situation. Send backup. Also notify animal control to document a livestock shooting." When the second unit arrived, they photographed Jasper's body, gathered witness statements, and collected the rifle. The HOA workers were detained on site for questioning. Still, my heart felt like a sinking stone. Jasper was gone. Nothing would bring him back. Later that afternoon, Ben came rushing home after I called him. He dropped his backpack at the door and sprinted to the pasture. The minute he saw Jasper's lifeless body, his legs buckled. "Dad," he whispered, tears forming. "No, he was fine yesterday." "I know, son," I said, pulling him close. "He didn't suffer. It was quick, but we're not going to let this go." Ben wiped his eyes and looked at me. "We're suing them, right?" I nodded. "Oh, we're suing every last one of them, starting with Cheryl Langston." The next morning, I drove down to the county courthouse and filed a complaint for criminal trespassing and destruction of property. My lawyer, Bill Cross, an old friend of the family, immediately jumped on it. Bill was a pit bull in court, and he hated HOA overreach more than anyone I knew. "I've been waiting for a case like this," he told me. "They went too far. Way too far. And this bull, you said he had pedigree." "Top of the line," I said, "worth at least 40 grand, maybe more." Bill raised an eyebrow. "That makes this a felony-level property loss." "Excellent." That same day, Cheryl Langston decided to pay me a visit. She showed up in her white Lexus, parked right outside the ranch gate like she owned the place. She got out wearing heels and a blazer like she was attending a charity event, not a crime scene. I didn't even give her the chance to speak. I walked straight up to the fence and said, "Turn around, Cheryl. You're not welcome here." "Now wait just a moment, Mr. Granger," she began, all fake charm. "There's been a misunderstanding. My crew was instructed to clean up the shared view lines for the homeowner's benefit. We didn't know you had livestock so close to the easement." "There's no easement," I barked. "You crossed my fence line. You brought guns. You killed my animal. And you think that's a misunderstanding?" Cheryl held her ground. "It was an unfortunate mistake. But technically, there's no technically about it. The sheriff has your men on record admitting they were sent here under your orders, and my lawyer is already building a case." Her smile faltered. "You'll be hearing from my attorney as well," she snapped, flipping her sunglasses down. "You're making this much bigger than it needs to be." "No, you made it big," I growled. "And believe me, this is just the beginning." 2 days later, the HOA tried to spin the whole thing. They released a statement in the neighborhood newsletter. Due to a miscommunication during a routine maintenance operation, an incident occurred involving a neighboring ranch animal. "We deeply regret the situation and are working toward a peaceful resolution." Peaceful resolution? Ben read it out loud and nearly spit out his soda. "They killed our bull and called it a miscommunication," he said. "What next? They going to call it landscaping?" But what they didn't expect was the firestorm that came next. See, I wasn't the only one Cheryl had messed with. Turns out she'd been harassing a lot of people over the past year. One homeowner came forward about being fined for having a wind chime. Another said her kid got yelled at for chalk drawings on their sidewalk. People were tired of Cheryl, and when they heard about Jasper, they snapped. My story hit the local news that Friday. The headline read, "HOA gone too far, prize-winning bull shot on historic ranch." By Saturday, reporters were calling my landline. Animal rights groups were offering legal assistance. Even a local senator's office sent a representative to hear my case. But none of that stopped what happened next. Because just when I thought things had hit rock bottom, I got a call from Bill, my lawyer. "They filed a counterclaim," he said grimly. "What?" "The HOA says you violated a community buffer ordinance. They're claiming you were at fault for housing aggressive livestock near residential property." My mouth went dry. "They're trying to blame Jasper?" I asked in disbelief. Bill sighed. "Yep. They're trying to flip the narrative, and now we've got a legal war on our hands." And just like that, a terrible situation got even worse. I slammed the phone down, staring out the kitchen window where Jasper used to graze. Now, not only had they trespassed, not only had they shot my bull, but they had the audacity to blame me for it. My hands were trembling again, not from sadness this time, but from sheer boiling fury. Ben walked in holding his phone. "Dad, you're not going to believe this. Look." He showed me a Facebook post from the HOA's official page. It had a photo of Jasper with a long caption beneath it. "We regret the tragic incident involving livestock that posed an imminent threat during a safety inspection. The HOA board is working to ensure no further risks to surrounding families occur." I felt sick. They're painting him like some kind of wild beast. Ben said Jasper was the gentlest creature in the whole valley. I didn't respond. I just picked up my hat, walked out to the barn, and slammed the door behind me. Inside, I stared at Jasper's empty stall. His halter still hung on the hook. His feed bucket, half full, still sat on the rail. I leaned against the wooden post and let the silence press down on me. Then I heard the barn door creak open. It was Ben. "Dad," he said softly. "I know you're angry. I am too. But they're not just after your land anymore. They're after your name." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a personal attack. This was a power move. The HOA was trying to set a legal precedent, something that would let them expand their control to lands they didn't even own. They picked me because I was stubborn, old school, isolated. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought wrong. The next day, Bill and I marched into the county clerk's office with a box of documents, deeds, maps, historical permits, a full binder tracing my ranch's status as exempt from any HOA jurisdiction since 1932. "This is the proof," Bill said to the clerk. "Mr. Greer's land is legally recognized as autonomous from all surrounding residential management structures. We are filing a motion to counter the HOA's false claims and request immediate injunction against further HOA actions." It didn't end there. Ben had an idea. He suggested we go public. So I recorded a video. I stood in front of Jasper's empty pasture holding his halter in one hand. "My name is Hank Granger," I began. "I'm a rancher, a father, and until this week, I thought I lived in a free country." I told the story, every detail, the trespassing, the shooting, the lies, the smear campaign. I ended with this. Jasper didn't deserve what happened. No animal does. But this isn't just about a bull. It's about property, rights, boundaries, and bullies with clipboards. We posted the video that evening. By morning, it had over 400,000 views. Suddenly, the tide started to turn. People were tagging their state reps. Lawyers offered to help for free. Journalists from 3 national outlets reached out. But Cheryl, she wasn't backing down. That same weekend, she hosted an emergency HOA board meeting. The agenda expanded authority zones for neighborhood safety. I showed up uninvited. It was held in the community clubhouse where they usually threw wine mixers and book club events. I walked in wearing my boots, my hat, and holding a copy of the land deed in my hand. The room went quiet. Cheryl stood at the front mid-sentence. "And with this resolution, we ensure that non-compliant." "Non-compliant?" I interrupted. "Is that what you're calling private property now?" She flushed red. "Mr. Granger, you are not a member of this board. Please leave." "I'll leave when I've said my piece." The crowd murmured. Some whispered, some stared at their feet. I stepped forward. "You people need to know what this woman is doing in your name. She sent armed workers onto my land. They killed my bull, and now she's trying to rewrite the law to cover her tracks." Someone in the back raised their hand. "Is that true?" Cheryl stammered. "They were contracted workers. The bull was aggressive. He charged." "No, he didn't." I snapped. "He was sunbathing, and you sent a man with a gun onto someone else's land." More murmurs. Then someone said, "If that was my dog instead of his bull, would you have done the same?" The whole room turned. Cheryl's lips quivered. We were simply enforcing community safety. Another voice. "I didn't sign up for this. You're making us all look bad. I held up the deed. My land, my rules, and you can take your HOA boundaries and keep them where they belong, inside your own damn fences." Then I walked out, and that was the moment Cheryl lost control. But just as I thought things were calming down, something else happened. I came home later that night to find my front gate open. Cooper barked wildly at the side of the barn. I ran up, flashlight in hand, scanning the area, and that's when I saw it. The side of my barn had been spray painted with large red letters. Dangerous livestock. Violet's code. My heart sank. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't a random act. It was a warning, a threat. Someone had entered my property again and vandalized it in the dead of night. Ben rushed out behind me. "What the? Who did this?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but it's not over. Because now it wasn't just legal, it was personal, and I had no idea what they were planning next. The next morning, I didn't even get a chance to pour my coffee before I got a call from the sheriff's office. "Mr. Granger," Deputy Harris said, "we received an anonymous tip claiming there's unlicensed livestock on your property. Animal control wants to do an inspection." I laughed bitterly. "Unlicensed? What next? You going to arrest my chickens for loitering?" "I know it's nonsense," Harris said quietly. "But once a complaint's filed, we've got to follow through. I'll be there myself to make sure they don't overstep." I hung up and exhaled hard. I'd lived on this ranch my entire life. I had every permit, every paper. This wasn't about rules or safety anymore. This was a power grab, plain and simple. By 10 a.m., a white van marked County Animal Control pulled into my drive, followed by Deputy Harris in his cruiser. Two officers stepped out with clipboards. "This won't take long, sir," one said. "We just need to verify livestock counts and confirm housing conditions." They inspected the barn, the pasture, the water lines. Everything was clean, labeled, and exactly where it should be. Cooper followed them everywhere, growling low under his breath. When they finished, the lead officer gave me a nod. "Everything looks fine. No violations here." As they turned to leave, I asked, "Mind telling me who filed the complaint?" He glanced back uneasy. "We're not supposed to say it, but off the record, it came from someone on the HOA board. Same name we've seen on a lot of these. Cheryl." I wasn't surprised, but now I had confirmation. She wasn't just digging her heels in. She was escalating. She'd gone from sending trespassers to trying to get my entire livestock operation shut down through harassment, and it didn't stop there. 2 days later, Ben came running into the kitchen waving a notice. "Dad, this was stuck to our mailbox." It was a printed flyer with HOA branding. Bold red letters at the top read, "Community Safety Alert. Unfenced livestock endangering children." The flyer included a blurry photo of Jasper from before the shooting, standing near the fence line peacefully chewing grass. "They're distributing this crap around the neighborhood," Ben said angrily, trying to make it look like Jasper was the threat. I grabbed the flyer and tore it in half. That's it. We're going public again. That night, I sat down in front of my camera and recorded another video. This time, I showed the vandalism on my barn. I read the flyer word for word. Then I held up a photo of Jasper wearing his blue ribbon medal at the state fair. "This is the bull they're calling dangerous," I said to the camera. "This gentle animal never hurt a soul, and now they're using his name to spread lies." I paused, breathing deeply. The truth is, this isn't about HOA rules. It's about power. This woman, Cheryl Langston, has turned a volunteer neighborhood board into a private army, and now she wants to silence me, to scare me off my own land. I leaned closer, but I'm not going anywhere. We posted the video. Within hours, it was shared by ranching groups, HOA watchdog pages, even some legal reform activists. The momentum was building. That's when the messages started coming in. People from around the country began sharing their HOA horror stories. One man said his daughter's lemonade stand was fined. Another woman said her HOA demanded she remove a wheelchair ramp for aesthetic reasons. Turns out this was bigger than just one ranch. It was a movement waiting to happen. The next morning, Bill called. His voice sounded different, excited but tense. "Hank, I just got an update from the county records office. You're going to want to sit down. I'm already standing. Go ahead." Turns out Cheryl's been trying to redraw the HOA boundary map. She filed a petition to classify surrounding rural land, including yours, as part of a proposed community environmental buffer zone. I blinked. Wait, what does that mean? It's a loophole. It would give the HOA environmental oversight of non-member properties within a certain radius. Basically, if this gets approved, they'd have legal grounds to manage your land. I was stunned. She tried to sneak it through under the radar. But now that the story's gone viral, people are watching. Bill paused, then added, "We need to stop that petition before the county board votes on it next week. Otherwise, they'll use that to lock down your rights permanently." So now it was a race against time. I had 7 days to stop Cheryl from rewriting the law and stealing what was left of my freedom. But just as we were rallying support, getting petitions signed and organizing public statements, something else happened. Something that made everything explode. Ben and I had just gotten home from a meeting with our attorney. It was late, dark. Cooper was pacing near the back door, restless. Suddenly, the barn lights flickered on. "Did you leave them on?" Ben asked. "No," I said, narrowing my eyes. We stepped outside, walking slowly toward the barn. Then we smelled it. Smoke. "Ben, go back. Call 911. I sprinted forward, kicking open the side door, and was met with thick black air and the hiss of small flames climbing the hay bales. It wasn't a huge fire yet, but it was intentional. Someone had thrown a fire starter into the barn. Within minutes, the sheriff and the volunteer fire department were on scene, extinguishing the blaze before it spread too far. Deputy Harris looked furious. "This wasn't an accident," he said. "We found a broken bottle with accelerant residue. Somebody lit this on purpose." "And I know exactly who," I said through clenched teeth. But Cheryl had been smart this time. There were no fingerprints, no cameras, no witnesses, just ash and the strong message it carried. "Back off or we'll finish what we started." That night, Ben barely slept. I sat on the porch with my shotgun across my lap, eyes on the barn all night. The line had been crossed. First they trespassed, then they killed. Now they tried to burn us out. And I knew this was no longer just about land or laws. This was war, and I was going to end it before they ruined someone else's life too. The smell of smoke still lingered the next morning. Ash was scattered across the floor of the barn like a final insult, a black stain on everything Jasper had once touched. The scorched beams hadn't collapsed, but the damage was there. Ugly, visible, and loud. Ben stared at the blackened hay bales. "If we hadn't gotten here when we did." "I know," I muttered. This was a warning, but they'd picked the wrong man to scare off. By noon, I had county arson investigators combing the barn. They confirmed what we already knew. Accelerants were used. The fire was deliberate, and whoever did it knew how to start one quick and quiet. But still no suspects, no fingerprints. And Cheryl, she vanished from sight, didn't answer her phone, didn't respond to HOA emails. She even canceled the upcoming HOA town hall for safety reasons. Coward. But here's what she didn't know. While she was hiding, the truth was spreading like wildfire. Because that morning, a TV news crew rolled onto my ranch, Channel 7. Big coverage, bigger voice. They filmed the barn damage, the bullet holes from when Jasper was shot, and even interviewed Ben, who spoke like a young man with fire in his chest and heartbreak in his voice. He was more than just a bull, Ben told the camera. He was family, and we're not going to let the people who did this get away with it. That footage aired on the evening news, and the next day everything blew up. Justice for Jasper started trending. Local lawmakers chimed in. A petition to investigate the HOA's activities reached over 100,000 signatures in 2 days. Even the state agriculture commissioner issued a statement saying, private ranch owners must be protected from unlawful overreach and property violations regardless of HOA disputes. Still, Cheryl stayed silent, but her silence only made her look more guilty. And then we got the break we didn't expect. It came from a teenager. Lisa, my neighbor from 2 properties down, called me up late that night. "Mr. Granger," she whispered over the phone. "My son Kyle, he saw something." I sat up straight. "What do you mean?" "He was out with his friends the night the barn was set on fire. They were riding bikes past the HOA clubhouse. He saw 2 men loading stuff into the back of a white HOA maintenance truck, and one of them had a gas can." "Did he get a picture?" There was a pause. Then yes, I told him not to get involved. But now with all this happening, I told her to send it straight to Bill. And when I saw the photo, my jaw dropped. Clear as day. A man we recognized from the earlier trespass, the one who held the rifle, standing beside a second man, both loading gear into the truck. One was holding a red gas can. There was even a timestamp 2 hours before the barn fire. Bill called the sheriff immediately. With the photo plus the prior incident and witness testimony, they had enough to get a search warrant for Cheryl's HOA storage units. 2 days later, they executed it. What they found? A case of unused accelerant bottles, a crate of trail cameras, likely used for surveillance on properties like mine, and in one drawer, a printed list of addresses labeled Targeted Compliance Phase 2. My ranch was circled in red ink. Deputy Harris met me in town later that evening. His face was serious. "We've got enough now. Charges are being prepared. The DA is reviewing everything." I let out a long breath. It wasn't justice yet, but it was coming. Then he said something that chilled me again. "Hank, you're not the only one she targeted. Another rancher across the valley. Same thing. Flyers, threats, then a fire scare. They didn't speak up because they were scared, so it wasn't personal, it was patterned. Cheryl had been trying to run a long game, push out landowners one by one, make way for development and HOA expansion. And Jasper, he was just the first casualty that got the world's attention. The next day, I returned to the pasture. It was quiet. Ben had fixed up a simple wooden sign and placed it at the edge of the fence in loving memory of Jasper, the gentle giant. I stood beside it in silence. People were driving by now, leaving flowers, small gifts. One kid left a blue ribbon on the gate, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we weren't fighting alone. But Cheryl still hadn't been arrested. The HOA board hadn't been dissolved, and the buffer zone proposal still scheduled for vote in 48 hours. We needed to end this. We needed one final push. So that night, I organized a town hall of my own. I rented out the county fairgrounds, invited press, community leaders, ranchers, and neighbors from miles around. When I stepped on that stage, I looked out and saw hundreds of faces. Young, old, white, black, farmers, business owners, even a few HOA board members who'd quietly reached out and said, "We didn't know. We want her gone too." I took the mic. "My name is Hank Granger. I've lived on this land my whole life, and I've never been ashamed to say I love it." I told them everything. Jasper, the trespass, the shooting, the smear campaign, the fire. Then I held up a copy of Cheryl's target list. "She was coming for all of us," I said. "I was just first in line." Silence, then applause, then standing ovation. Reporters were filming, and that's when I ended with this. "I'm not just asking for justice for my ranch. I'm asking you to stand up for every family who's ever been bullied by people in suits with too much power and too little heart." The crowd roared, but the real battle, the vote on the buffer zone, was still to come. The morning of the vote, I arrived at the county board meeting early. Bill was already there dressed sharp, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Then in walked Cheryl Langston for the first time since the fire. She wore dark sunglasses and a white jacket, trying to look important. But everyone turned to stare. She looked smaller now, weaker, like the truth had drained her of all that fake confidence. The board meeting began. Each side presented their case. Cheryl tried to spin her plan as environmental stewardship and visual harmony. Bill shredded her. Then I stood, and for 5 minutes I spoke from the heart. No shouting, no anger, just a father who lost a bull and nearly lost his legacy. The board deliberated, and then the verdict came. Motion to expand the HOA buffer zone, denied unanimously. Cheryl sat frozen. She didn't say a word. She just stood up and walked out. But the moment she hit the hallway, 2 deputies stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." And just like that, Cheryl Langston, the iron-fisted HOA president, was finally being held accountable. But what happened next? That took everyone by surprise. The hallway went silent as the 2 deputies flanked Cheryl. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked around, maybe searching for a way out, maybe hoping someone would speak on her behalf. No one did. "Ma'am," Deputy Harris said firmly, "you are being detained for questioning in connection with multiple counts of criminal trespass, arson, destruction of private property, and reckless endangerment." The room behind us erupted. Reporters scrambling, people gasping, cameras flashing. Cheryl stammered, "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." Deputy Harris didn't even flinch. Not anymore. They walked her out in cuffs. Ben was standing beside me with his phone recording. "You think she'll go to jail?" he asked. I kept my eyes on the door Cheryl had just disappeared through. "She'll definitely stand trial. That's a start." The arrest hit the news within the hour. By dinner time, it had made the front page of the local paper. HOA president arrested in ranch fire investigation. But what the public didn't yet know, and what caught me off guard, was what they found when they searched Cheryl's home and office the next morning. Bill called me just after sunrise, sounding breathless. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "They found something in her desk drawer." "What?" "A purchase order for a bulldozer." I blinked. "A bulldozer scheduled for delivery to your address next week. Her plan was to have your barn and pasture cleared by force under the claim of community beautification enforcement." I froze. She was going to demolish my ranch. That's not all. They found internal HOA memos stating they were in preliminary talks with a commercial developer. Guess what they were planning to put on your land? I already knew. "Townhouses," I muttered. "Yep, high-end residential units, HOA controlled." She had dreams of expanding the community board's reach across the entire valley. My stomach churned. She wasn't just trying to force me out. She was planning to erase everything I'd built and replace it with concrete and condos. The woman was obsessed with control, and she didn't care who got crushed beneath her bulldozer, literally. That revelation sealed the coffin. Public outcry turned into public rage. Former HOA board members started stepping forward one by one, admitting they'd been pressured, manipulated, and even threatened by Cheryl to go along with her schemes. One woman tearfully told reporters, "She told me if I didn't vote her way, she'd find me into foreclosure." The district attorney's office began preparing charges, not just for trespass and arson, but for conspiracy, fraud, and abuse of authority. And suddenly, I wasn't the one on trial anymore. Cheryl was. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we started repairing the barn. Neighbors came to help. Lisa brought her son Kyle and a team of boys with hammers and nails. The local high school shop teacher donated new boards. Someone even delivered a fresh bale of hay with a note that read, "For the next gentle giant." Ben and I worked day and night, shoulder to shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, we laughed again. One afternoon, I caught Ben sitting by Jasper's memorial sign, sketching something in a notebook. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled. "I'm designing a new plaque, thinking we turn this whole spot into a quiet tribute space." I nodded slowly. "That would be good. Jasper deserves that. So did every farmer, rancher, and landowner who'd ever been pushed around by people like Cheryl. This wasn't just for us anymore. This was for all of them." Then came the final blow. 2 days before Cheryl's court hearing, the new HOA board, formed after the rest of the members resigned in shame, issued a public apology. They announced the immediate disbanding of the HOA, citing irreparable loss of trust and a need to return governance to the people. The board dissolved itself and relinquished all control of extended properties like mine. A crowd gathered outside the former HOA office to cheer as the HOA sign was taken down. I watched the video online, smiling as a small bulldozer, not Cheryl's, hauled the rusted HOA community sign straight into a dumpster. Poetic justice. But Cheryl, she didn't go down without one last twist. During her arraignment, Cheryl stood up in front of the judge and, in a move no one expected, tried to plead insanity. She claimed stress, paranoia, and overwork led her to lose touch with reality. That didn't sit well with the judge. "I've reviewed your emails, texts, and HOA memos." The judge said, "You were quite in touch with reality. You just thought it belonged to you." Cheryl was denied bail and ordered to stand trial. It would be a long case, but it no longer mattered how long, because justice had finally caught up with her. That night, as the sun dipped low over the pasture and bathed the ranch in soft golden light, Ben and I sat on the tailgate of the truck, sipping lemonade. Cooper snoozed between us, tail thumping softly in his sleep. "You know, Dad," Ben said, "for a while there, I thought we'd lost everything." I looked out at the repaired barn, at the open fields, at the new calf grazing quietly where Jasper once stood. "No," I said, "they tried, but we held on." He nodded. "Still, I hope this never happens to anyone else." I reached over, tousling his hair. "That's why we told the story, so people would learn. Stand up, fight back when they're pushed too far." Then I raised my glass toward the sky. "To Jasper," I said. "To Jasper," Ben echoed. And as the stars began to twinkle and the land breathed softly beneath our boots, we knew one thing for sure. The bull may have fallen, but the ranch still stood strong. Months passed. The headlines faded. The court case moved through the system, slower than molasses in winter. Cheryl Langston was facing multiple felony charges now: arson, fraud, criminal conspiracy, and unlawful use of authority. Her lawyer tried every trick in the book, delay after delay, but every motion got knocked down one by one, and I didn't stop watching. I attended every hearing, even when they dragged on. I wanted to be in the room when justice was read out loud. Ben kept a scrapbook of every article and photo. He added a page for each major update, especially the good ones. There were a lot more of those these days. The ranch, meanwhile, had healed. A new bull named Samson, a gift from a community livestock fund, had joined our herd. He wasn't Jasper, but he had that same gentle heart and wide, curious eyes. We even reopened our ranch to school tours again. Local kids would come out on Fridays to learn how to feed calves, plant seedlings, and see how a real ranch worked. Ben took the lead with the children. He'd light up every time a kid asked about that famous bull they heard about on the news. We turned the corner of Jasper's pasture into a garden, wildflowers blooming bright yellow and purple. A polished stone sat at the center engraved with the words Jasper, the bull that stood for something. People came to see it, to take pictures, to remember. But Cheryl, her story wasn't over. In a surprise move during pretrial hearings, her attorney floated a plea deal. No prison, the offer read, in exchange for stepping down from all community leadership positions, public apology, restitution, and a lifetime HOA ban. The district attorney called me to ask what I thought. I didn't even hesitate. No, I said. This wasn't a petty mistake. She tried to destroy people's lives. She doesn't get to walk away. He agreed. The plea deal was rejected, and that meant the trial was finally on. The courtroom was packed. Media, neighbors, former HOA board members, even a couple from 2 states over who'd driven down after seeing our story online. Cheryl sat at the defendant's table, smaller than I remembered. Her blazer was too big. Her voice, once so sharp, now barely carried when she spoke. The prosecution laid everything bare. They brought out the memos, the spray-painted photos, the HOA maintenance crew member who finally confessed to helping start the fire in exchange for immunity. And most powerfully, they brought in me. I took the stand, looked Cheryl in the eyes, and told the jury what she stole. My bull, my barn, my peace. But the worst part, she made my son afraid in his own home. Cheryl didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her eyes just darted away. Ben spoke next. He showed the jury Jasper's blue ribbons, talked about feeding him as a boy, how it felt to come home and see his best friend in a puddle of blood. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge had tears in her eyes. It took the jury less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentence came fast. 12 years in state prison, no parole for the first date. Cheryl was led away in cuffs. And just like that, the reign of HOA terror was over. 3 months later, the town threw a community barbecue in our honor. People came from every corner of the county. Ranchers, veterans, teachers, small business owners. Even the new head of zoning regulation showed up. He personally delivered a declaration stating my ranch was now officially exempt from any and all future HOA claims or expansions. The crowd cheered when he read it aloud. Ben hugged me tight. "You did it, Dad." "No," I told him. "We did." As the sun dipped low and people danced around the fire pit, someone asked if we'd ever sell the ranch now that the land had gone up in value. I looked around at the rebuilt barn, the blooming flower garden, Samson grazing near the fence, and Cooper chasing fireflies. I smiled. Not a chance. This land carried too many stories, and now it carried one more. The story of how a greedy HOA president tried to steal what wasn't hers but forgot one thing. You don't mess with a rancher and his bull, especially not when the whole world is watching.